Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we will get started. I have first Dr. Colin Napier. Colin is the director of Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network, which is the nation's first statewide AI initiative. He leads Mississippi's coordinated strategy for, wait for it, AI literacy, workforce development, and applied AI adoption across higher education, K-12 education, state and local government, and also business and industry. Welcome, Colin. Next, I'd like to welcome Ryan Tratner. Ryan is the co-founder and CTO of StudyFetch, which is an AI learning platform, and he works there for a variety of small problems like engineering and product development, also building out enterprise partnerships. What StudyFetch is doing is building tools that turn course materials into personalized learning and study opportunities. And since their launch in 2023, they've already reached millions of users and had billions of social media views. Welcome. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Paul Turnbull, who is a former superintendent here in the California Public School Districts, but currently now the president of Mid-Pacific Institute, a college prep preschool through 12th school that is based in Honolulu, Hawaii. Mid-Pacific is the only preschool through 12 school that in the United States that has an immersive technology program. It features robotics, game design, computer programming, and a 3D laser technology and virtual reality capacity for preserving historic treasures. So welcome, Paul. We sit at a really momentous occasion. I'm really thrilled that all of you are here, and thank you very much for your time. I'd like to kick us off with a very quick exercise. Feel free to close your eyes if you want, but what I'd like you to do is think about a young person in your life, someone you care really deeply for. And now imagine that person 10 years from now. What are your hopes for who they have become in that time? This is what is at stake for education. We're living through a really impossibly extraordinary time in human history. The potential for AI is dazzling, and the risks are also very, very real. So how are we going to collectively ensure human flourishing? We have today the opportunity to hear from education leaders and practitioners across the full range of pre-kindergarten through career. And what we're here to talk about is AI literacy. But how do we even begin to define what it means to be literate in a technology that's changing this fast? Let's dive in. So what we have as a first question is starting with the students. When we think AI literacy, let's begin with the folks that we're trying to prepare. So in terms of student experience, and we'll start with just about a minute, what are your learners engaged with AI?
So in Mississippi, from K through 12 into post-secondary, students are actively engaged in the space. They're not oblivious to the real world and what's happening. They have social media, they can scroll through the different news and see the reality and availability of AI tools and agents and things of that nature. The challenge at the moment, though, is keeping the curriculum up to speed with these real-world changes and challenges. So we want to ensure and encourage them, keep using these tools, but we want to make sure their judgment and their responsible usage is primary focus in that space. But it's very much a good appetite at the moment in Mississippi for students across all demographics.
Awesome. Ryan.
Yeah, so we have basically created an AI native platform. So every student who comes to StudyFetch is wanting to utilize this technology to learn just right away. They're not wanting to use it to cheat. And so we have to provide the tools that basically allow them to take advantage of the newest thing available, but in the right way. And we also have, the fortunate opportunity as well of working with NVIDIA and other partners to basically take what we're doing and use that for workforce training as well. So teaching students and learners who are about to go into the workforce what these specific tools are, how they can utilize them, and teach them like how they function initially. So when they go and use them in the job, they understand exactly how to do that.
Awesome.
And so at a preschool through 12th grade campus, I'd say it falls into 3 different categories. There's the personal, they play with it, in the way that kids are playing with AI, and they're discovering what creation means, they're discovering what information acquisition means. Then on the academic side, there's also the real, I would say, reality that the old method of teaching and learning, where it's simply memorization, regurgitation, and then immediately forgetting, is colliding head-on with AI. And that's where we find a lot of AI slop and a lot of sort of brain fry at the moment. But the stuff that's really exciting that kids are starting to come up with is just that they are now able to go beyond the typical curriculum. And when they see something that's interesting to them, they dive in because they now have a colleague, although it's artificial, this colleague can help them really dig into something, and they're using that to have better conversations with their peers, but more importantly with their teachers. So now there's a dialogue that's happening that's at a higher level.
So there is the appetite. The entire ecosystem of education is really locked in on this. And it's about learning. It's about learning what the tools are and how to profitably use them for the purposes that you have.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So when we think about what students are actually learning, and obviously we're talking not just children, but adults, young adults, also the professionals who are themselves the teachers. I mean, you cover a broad swath of what it means to be learning even in the workforce. Brian and Paul particularly, what is the evidence that you're seeing that the AI initiatives that you're rolling out are actually shifting outcomes, right? We're really talking not just about generating excitement or engagement, but having tangible effect for learners.
Yeah. So there's a few ways to like we kind of look at this. The first is, in the overall AI literacy discussion. So it's whether the students that are coming to study fetch in our platforms are actively using this responsibly. So are they taking and engaging in a way that helps them learn, or are they taking and engaging in a way that helps them kind of like get through class or to cheat? And that's something we actively monitor. So we've done a massive amount of studies on that. We've analyzed millions of conversations among millions of users. And we figured out that, students coming to study fetch are coming to learn. Then again, that is what we advertise. Like, they wouldn't be coming to study fetch if they wanted to cheat. So that's a little bit of, something there. So then we have to look at, okay, if they're coming to learn and they're trying and attempting and their intent is to use study fetch to learn. So when they're typing in something, it's to use it to learn, or they're speaking to use it to learn. Do they actually get good outcomes? And so we figured out that over 92% of active study fetch users do improve their grades. And this is both in a consumer environment, so when study fetch users come and they just actively go to learn by themselves, and then also in an institutional environment as well, where they're using it actively in a classroom. We've also looked at the combination of these two things. So I was just actually talking with Muffy about this, where if a student is coming to study fetch and their intent when they're using AI is to learn, and they're, the way they're prompting is engaging and it's trying to do responsibly, their outcomes internally in their practice tests and their quizzes are much higher than students who come with a different intent. So in both spheres, both using the AI to actively learn and then also using it responsibly are helping students.
That's exciting news. That's really important to hear, right? The intent of wanting to further yourself and use the tools responsibly is actually producing the better outcome. Yeah. Paul.
So I think the context would be at one particular school, the context would be the difference between a lecture, stand and deliver, a little bit like this, and more engagement. So if there's more engagement, what we're seeing in terms of student outcome is that AI then is introduced along the different methods of productive struggle is something that we really aim for, or the desirable difficulties, wherein there should be an increasing level of complexity that is just simply difficult. This is not a yes or no binary kind of environment. So I can give you examples of all the way down to our 3-year-olds. So we have 3 and 4-year-olds who, through their teachers, investigate what a network looks like. But in that particular case, it's ecological. So they'll go out and they'll take a look at a campus full of trees. And there's 80 on my campus, there's 80 different variety of trees. So they look at that and root systems. But AI actually helps them with we'll call it the translation of a 3-year-old's question to the reality of what it is that they're looking at. And then when they put it all together at the end of the year, they were able to publish a book. So you've got a book of thoughts related to the reality of what's going on in the world. And that book will continue to follow those kids all the way through elementary school. Then in middle school, you've got the same sort of thing, but in that particular case, it's more like urban development. What is it that is so important about the way that we are looking at history, we're living history, we're using math, science in an interdisciplinary way, but the ability then for us to articulate what those things are all aided by AI, right? How can I figure out what that next question is if I don't know that I don't know? And then in high school, it's the same thing, but then we branch out. And our teachers are extremely open to the idea of collaborating with students. So we just surveyed our faculty. 50%, a full 50% of our faculty are collaborating with students on how to use AI in their courses across grades, across disciplines. So that alone means that the outcomes are going to be a little more personalized. Mm-hmm. They will be specific to the subjects themselves, but it's less fear, so we're pulling down barriers while we're increasing application. It's a really exciting place to be.
It must be. The idea of littles being out and asking questions about the trees just really delights me. And what we're hearing then is we can think about outcomes in so many ways, and this could be a whole panel on assessment, and it's not, but test scores are one way, artifacts that are produced are another, but deeper inside that is the ability to ask the kinds of questions and to structure your own learning path and to recognize what you need to know and how to pursue that. It's really exciting. The really nice segue, actually, is we think about equity being an enormous part of what's going to ensure a healthy pipeline from kindergarten all the way through to career. And I'm wondering, Colin, about sort of practical ways that Mississippi is expanding opportunity, especially for the historically underrepresented students. Rural schools are really hard hit. In a lot of places, they don't have the kind of access to resources. So what are you seeing about how it's helping, and how might we worsen inequity if we're not being careful?
So if we don't have the accessibility and the equity, then we don't have the opportunity, right? And so in my role in the state of Mississippi, a largely rural state, is we, in the entirety of a higher ed, K-12, state government, and industry ecosystem, are ensuring we're breaking down those barriers of entry. I think sort of the myth has been or continues to be AI is only for a specific type of individual, maybe somebody with a CS background or IT technical knowledge, and that is far from the truth. AI is for all, AI is for everyone. And so the role and the message and mission in the state of Mississippi is ensuring that no matter if you are in the Delta or you are on the Gulf Coast or in Jackson, our capital of the state, and regardless of your education level, you have access to no-cost resources for you to better yourself in your career path, or maybe you want to change your career path, or maybe you are a student in K-12 and you want to better understand the trajectory of how things are going forward in manufacturing or cybersecurity or a lot of these critical sectors we serve, not only in Mississippi, but across the United States. So the goal here is ensuring an equal playing field for everyone, where we can offer things at no cost. And part of the way we are able to do this and keep up with change is by partnering with industry, is by partnering with organizations like NVIDIA to ensure we have the latest, greatest cutting edge information and resources, and we can turn around and facilitate that to anyone in the state of Mississippi. And so that's been very successful to date, but there's so much more ground to cover as we see the space changing every 6 months or every 3 months versus the typical curriculum review taking a year or longer to implement those changes. We don't have time to wait. We need to offer more things, even short course programming, non-credit and all of that. So we reach the entirety of the incumbent workforce as well as that next generation coming through.
Right. And I think it's the beauty of that partnership. We have the content knowledge and the awareness of where the field is moving. You have the deep roots into how to reach your entire state population. So, thank you. So, sense of how they're learning. Would like to also get a sense of where we might be making progress. So, one of the things that I hear at AI summits, education summits, is the importance of student voice, the importance of bringing the learners themselves into the process, into the governance, into the structure. And so, Paul, I'm wondering, you've talked a little bit about the collaboration that your students are doing. What's another way that you're bringing students into the design or governance of AI, and so that they do have that real voice in the tools that are shaping their future?
So I'll start with an example, and I'll sort of add on, Colin, to what you were just talking about. English language development is something that is very important in many states. California, I was a superintendent here. English language learners were a very large component of what we worked with. In Hawaii, at my particular school, we also have an international student population from predominantly East Asia, but multiple languages. And we've been conducting research on our campus with those particular students to have voice in terms of the way that they perceive typical English language learning as it happens in classrooms. AI has become part of it. We've built different methods and platforms for those students to feel like they had increased voice, but more importantly, they had a low fear of judgment in practicing the actual language. EL acquisition is based predominantly on reading and writing, but very little in terms of actual conversation. And the more conversation you have, the more likely you are to enjoy your life and the life around you, and access becomes with that. And so a lot of that has really helped us in terms of just ultimate instructional design. So beyond that, we have an AI advisory council on our campus. There are industry leaders, higher education leaders, and student leaders. So the students directly tell us this is how this is applying or not. It's really important for the adults to listen. We also have students now who are AI innovators. So we have this group of kids who are self-identified as interested in AI. We have kids we have recruited. They're from the CS side. They're also from the humanities and the arts. And those students are both training our own faculty. So we have sort of these lunch hour sandbox sessions. Faculty come in and they listen to what the kids are doing. The faculty, talk about an open and trusting environment. The faculty are saying, here's what I'd like to try, or here's what I'm playing with. What do you think? And then we have students who are also in state and national conferences who are doing these things. So instead of us, you'd be listening to my students, frankly. And when you can have that kind of dialogue that really has adults listening to kids, because they're speaking like experts. And if you think about a 12th grade student or a higher education student, they're professional students at that point. They know what good instruction looks like, and they know what poor instruction feels like. And so we bring all of those components together.
That's lovely. I also have had a chance to be out at Mid-Pacific Institute, and the students' ability to represent their thoughts, their concerns, their needs is really impressive. So again, when we talk about outcomes, being able to articulate what matters, really important. I would love if we could be here for 2 hours. I have so many questions for them. But shifting gears a little bit, we know that there's a lot of concern, even fear about AI out right now. Students are voicing that. They are not coming as blank slates. They're not simply excited. They are also worried. And so, Ryan, I'll start with you, but what are you hearing from students about their concerns? And how are you responding to that and helping them see how AI could support better learning outcomes?
So there's a lot kind of going on here. There's both concerns from the students about, what their life will be in the future, and then there's concerns about students with, adopting this technology as well, like as they're learning. So we'll start off with adopting it as they're learning. I think the largest concern that students have is in a lot of places, and I think you've probably done a very good job of this, but a lot of places there's not a lot of structure and like guidelines for how to utilize AI properly in the classroom. And so what we're seeing is, there are, probably positive ways to use AI, negative ways to use AI, in ways that maybe the student thinks is positive, but it's, degrading their critical thinking a little bit as well. And all this, combined, like puts an environment of student where they potentially could have one class that's really going after it and another class that's not. And it becomes confusing. And I think there's also a lot of fear on basically like what is yours and what is not. And as these kind of AIs become more like partners in our thinking, kind of like, and you're collaborating with it, you're performing research, and that's something you would do outside of school. The ways that we kind of structure like what is ours and what isn't, I think need to be a little bit redone. So we're seeing a lot of shifts to like, there's two ways to handle it. The first is you could put everybody back on the paper, back in classroom doing a test, and the other is you kind of allow this to be part of the project, and you just expect more. And I think, giving proper guidelines, both in adoption for both educators, because sometimes the educators themselves don't know what is allowed and what isn't, and then also the students is very, very important so that everybody knows what's going on there. And then the second part of this is kind of like the fear of the future. And that this like large new thing. So we're seeing this in a lot of different ways. I would say the first way is that students navigating, like, we primarily focus on college students. So these are students who, are transitioning into the workforce. Many already have jobs or internships. Or they're, studying for like an advanced program, like a large, amount of study fellowship students are nurses, for example. And what we're seeing is that they're looking at their, what they're learning in school, and then they're wondering, in 5 years, in 10 years, will this still be something? Will this still be a thing? And they're scared. And I think, that's something that we need to be very, very collaborative about. I think, even if we're shifting curriculums a little bit more rapidly than we're already doing, I think that can kind of ease it, but also just start a conversation with the students about how what they're learning is still important for them, and how we can kind of direct students in a way that whatever they're learning, will be important for their overall general knowledge in the future as well. And teaching them the skills of how to apply this new technology to, what they're doing. So for example, if they're learning computer science, also teaching them how to do agentic coding, for example, is really valuable, so that they feel like, okay, I got this.
And Colin, you've got the swath. You're also dealing with the concerns of the community. So statewide, how are you hitting this?
So I think it starts with trust. And having the hard conversations about what AI is, what it is not, where we are, where we're going, sort of myth busting in many cases. But it starts with the capacity of literacy. And again, it's having the community members or even the students or the educators, anyone that represents Mississippi, having them understand why this matters and where we're going. Again, not 5 or 10 years down the road, but 6 months to a year. And from a student standpoint, building off of Ryan's point here is educating them on their career pathways. And I like to talk about this too, so first off, I'm a CS grad. We need computer scientists for sure, but I don't want every student to think they have to go that route. Right? Stop thinking of AI as a single career. Think of it as this capability layer across every career. And so with that, when you start opening up that dialogue and conversation, you start addressing some of the fears of the student's future within the workforce and saying, hey, you can continue on that healthcare pathway. Here's how you can or will or should use AI responsibly and ethically in that role as well. And so from the community side, we talk about families as well as part of this conversation, and not letting them be spectators, but letting them be participants in this conversation or this education component. It's not just meant for one particular individual or group. It's, again, AI for all. How can we work on that literacy and build that up to ensure we understand the opportunity and the values and incentivize that, but address challenges and limitations. And again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know anyone that does, so we don't know everything forthcoming, but we can stay parallel with the train. The train's rolling. Don't get in front of it. It's going to run you over. But how do we stay parallel and understand the evolving ecosystem of the world, the nation, and in particular, my state of Mississippi?
Yeah. I'd like to dig in a little deeper there, because you mentioned families, and all of the work that I'm reading and watching, just starting to appreciate that that's the group that's been left out so far. Is there one or two things that you're doing in Mississippi to help bring families in that you could share?
So one thing we have going on right now is what we call a community of practice. And there's been many cases around the U.S. where that may be educator focused, but in Mississippi, educators are part of the community, right? As well as parents and other students and local leaders and all of that, but a true community of practice where people can come and share their concerns. They have a seat at the table that can say, hey, here's my fear, here's my understanding or my misunderstanding, help me better see how things are evolving. Also, how can I upskill or reskill myself? So it's sort of a catch-all to address the needs in the state, from a curriculum or literacy standpoint, to the non-traditional learner, to the families, and just an evolving ecosystem. We can't just have a conversation once every 6 months at a conference, right? We have to have it basically 24/7, like a live active feed, a continuous feedback loop, hearing from the local leaders, hearing from the industry, hearing from institutions, and continue pushing forward. And so that's the model, the framework we have set up in the state of Mississippi. And Mississippi, in comparison to many other states, is very, very small. And so one thing we're showing in Mississippi is that we're doing it and that other states can replicate that and build it up to scale as well.
What I'm really hearing is, thank you very much. What I'm hearing is the idea that school, education, learning is becoming so multifaceted. So you've got a family that might be supporting a younger learner, but they themselves are also the learners, and they themselves are also on a career path. You've got students who are worried about the future that they're through, and you've got learners who are part of the governance. So we're upending, and I think in a productive way, who's the learner, what's their role, what's their obligation, and that this is no longer something that takes place during a 9 or 10 month period of the year, but this is just an ongoing, constantly updating 24/7. AI is going to support that. It's driving the need for that, but it's going to support the ability to deliver that as well. What about a quick wrap up? This clock says 10 minutes. You gave me a 5. So is it 5 to the questions? Perfect. We are so in sync. Yes. So as just a quick way to sign off our time and make sure that you guys have a chance to talk, I'm really curious from each of your perspectives, what would you want our audience to do, this year in a really concrete way that would ensure that students are getting the education they need to prepare them to flourish in the way that we are all hoping? And who would like to start?
I'll kick it off and say, there's many times I talk to audiences and I say, if you have not had the discussion yet, you're already behind the curve. I mean, 3 years, if we want to pinpoint it at a quote unquote chat GPT moment, we're 3 years beyond that now. But the discussion only goes so far. It's about the action taken in tandem with that and seeing it. And, the innovation comes from the risk. Right. There are things that may fail, but in the same time, it's a learning experience in a lot of this, whether that's academia or just community engagement there. And so as this realm keeps evolving all the time, we're going now into OpenClaw and agentic AI and agents and so much more. see what we can do in embracing that, implementing that, adopting that, and taking action across the board, again, from K through career pathways.
I definitely agree on the conversation, without a doubt. I think that's the most important thing that all of us need to have, especially with learners. I think the next key thing that's important is the ability to just continue to try new things. I think that's also adding on to the ability to fail, is that this technology is continuously evolving on quite literally a daily basis. You probably heard 20, 30 updates as you've been here at GTC today, maybe. And it evolves all the time. What's going to be there yesterday is not going to be there tomorrow or today. And I think it's really important that we continue to have discussions about those and continue to try those technologies. And then, on what I think the most important thing to teach and to learn is basically, at the simplest way is how to prompt, but what it really is how to describe and be creative about what you want out of an output. So it's essentially a delegation skill where you become the director or the boss. And I think as these AI tools get more advanced, all of them are converging on this kind of central point where you have the ability to be creative over whatever you want at any point in life, whether you're learning something or whether you're building something, and you just need to understand how to harness that technology and utilize it.
And building off of both of Colin and Ryan, first thing, just keep trying. Absolutely. You can't do anything if you're just sitting on the sidelines, right? You have to just get into it. But get into it with the idea that there are parameters. And so we're talking about kids. I would hope that adults around those students are helping them. There aren't too many young drivers out there that haven't had a little bit of something to help them along. And, hopefully we're not going to be around the folks who are just going to get in the car and go. We also have to understand that something that you had mentioned, the idea of rhetoric, right? The ability to use language to represent ourselves, to really communicate with others. And at my level, again, right, 3 years old through 17 or 18 years old, the ability to make human connection should always be the predominant goal for maturation. If AI or the internet back in the day, or graphing calculators 100 years before that, these things are tools. They are absolutely fundamentally life-changing tools in today's world. But if we can't talk to each other and we can't figure out who we are in the world and what our impact on others is, then we're blindly going down this other path that just simply won't yield the results we're hoping for kids. Mm-hmm. Our ability to have them understand who they are and how AI can be a supplement, not supplant the things that they need to know, is, for me, it's the primary goal. But yeah, I would agree that language and human relationships.
Yes, we are so good with questions. Yay.
Thank you. What a great panel. Thanks for sharing all of your wonderful and unique experiences. My name is David Miller. I'm with Carnegie Mellon University. I have personally been experimenting with an AI learning platform in my class this semester, and I've had a lot of wonderful surprises. I love your comment about supplementing the class, and that's kind of how I look at it. I was kind of curious if either of you could share any kind of surprise that you've kind of witnessed or observed where you're leveraging AI for good in education. If you have anything to share, that's my question.
Which two? Or maybe we'll do one. Anyone. Go ahead. Grab it.
Yeah.
And we'll try to keep questions and answers brief and hit at least a few.
I love the idea of an AI as a supplement to the classroom, and I wanted to talk about one specific story where we heard from basically an educator on that students who used AI and they had the opportunity to use it at home and look at the material through it actually came to class more engaged. And so rather than it being a tool where you could just go ahead and not talk to your peers or to the professor or to something like that, you basically have all the students going, engaging, understanding, learning about something in their own way, and getting excited about it, and then being able to come to class and having substantially more engaging conversations and discussions about that topic. And I think that was, one of the things that's more of a surprise, but actually, assists with like completely being a supplement to the class, where the class can become more engaging because of a tool that's external.
Fantastic. Another question? Yes.
I work in the Netherlands in a university, and I have a question for Paul. So we have a lot of support for our lecturers. We have trainings on AI literacy, ethics. We have training on pedagogy and assessment. We have a large language model available for all our staff and students. We have educational specialists, but still we see that a lot of lecturers are struggling how they can help students with AI in their class, how they can integrate it into their lessons, because it seems that educating them in how they can use AI is not enough. So I'm really curious how you tackle that problem in your school.
It's ongoing. I put it that way. It's equal. So out of that faculty survey that I had mentioned, 93% of the faculty understand that it's inevitable, right? So let's get on it. And so mindset is first. Also, I think it's like 89% are super skeptical. Right. So, and I think that's appropriate that let's go together with this, but let's also make sure that we are checking along the way, trust but verify. The ability to help teachers understand how to modify instructional design will take time, and that's all it is. So I think it sounds like you have an amazing environment, and it's constant support, but it's constant support meeting teachers where they are. Sometimes it's professional development and they can come in. Sometimes you have to mandate a few things. And sometimes it's just sort of peer-to-peer interaction, which actually seems to be the biggest way to really move the ground for us anyway.
We might have time for 2 more questions. Brief, and then we'll go. Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking my question. Perhaps this is for Ryan and Paul. I am a dad and an entrepreneur. So I have 2-pronged questions. That's why I chose the 2 of you. So as a dad,
we'll go with 1 each. We'll try to get 1 more person.
Awesome. So as a dad, I have a daughter who's going to go into kindergarten, and I'm always trying to figure out ways to expose her at this early stage to tools like Grok. So Grok has Imagine. Grok has Rudy that she speaks with. So I'm like trying to get her exposed to it, but that means I'm also exposing her to screen time and things like that. So there's this battle in my head that's going through. Any tips or anything from a research point of view that you have seen? Second question, as an entrepreneur.
We'll stop with just the 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next time.
So as an educator, I would just simply say her relationship with you is the most important thing, period. Period, full stop. For you to be able to say as a father, you know what, that's a really good question. I don't know. Let's go to choose your platform. That's just the easiest way to go through this, because 1, it says that nobody knows everything, and that's true of AI as well. And here are ways that we can investigate, because if inquiry is the process, it becomes the mindset, and then it becomes the behavior.
I want to recognize also that we had intended to have a 4th panelist, Anthony Holloman, and he is the commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Conference. If you were expecting him to be here, he sends his apologies. He was needed elsewhere and really regretted not being able to be with us. We probably have time for a very lightning fast question.
Hi, my name is Avinash. I'm a student at UIUC. And my question is about, for Ryan specifically. So as a student, there's tons of AI tools. So as a student, there's so many tools available, but out of all these tools, what makes StudyFetch so much more important than using a Khan Academy equivalent like KhanMigo?
Ryan.
Yeah. So there's a few ways that we approach this. The first is kind of centered around exactly what we're teaching. So we try to take in as much context as possible at the start. And this is, from taking all the class material that a student is learning, putting it into the platform, and then creating a massive plan for the student about how to study it. And then the platform evolves and adapts with the learner. So basically, whatever they're doing, whether they're going from A to Z, we're taking notes in the platform to taking practice tests to having conversations with the tutor, it's learning more and more about them, but also about other people studying the same things. And so we have this functionality called the Learn Engine that we've been building out for a long time, which understands basically, if there's 1,000 students taking economics and they're learning supply and demand, what is the best pieces of content and the best delivery methods and experiences that we can give those students that result in the best outcomes? So you can imagine it as like, instead of optimizing for conversions, it would be optimized for learning outcomes. And that's something we're building out to make it adaptable and personal and actually result in better outcomes.
Awesome. What I heard was the things that matter across all the ages are approaching this with a willingness to try, a willingness to fail, and an intent to learn. So I'd really encourage all of you to take some time over the next couple of days and think about something you are really curious about, and then go and try using AI to support your ability to learn that. Please thank all of the panelists with me.